wanted to share my food favourites for the month of March. I've not done something like this before, and I've been watching a lot of food favourite videos on YouTube at the moment, and I was really inspired by them. I've watched quite a few different ones. I've watched some Dutch language ones, which was really interesting, and I've also been quite inspired by Poppy Dinsey's food favourite videos, and also a lot of other lifestyle favourites from a range of different people who have included food in their favourites. And I thought, you know, I really love food and I'm always coming across things I really like, and I thought I would join in because it seems a lot of fun and I have lots of things I'd like to share. So I'm going to go through food items and also books and my favourite dish of the month. So we'll start off with my favourite dish of the month, which is the prawn and chorizo rice pot from the cookbook Greedy Girl's Diet by Nadia Sawalha. And this cookbook, as you might guess from the title, is lighter food for women. It is aimed at women who are trying to lose weight or maintain their weight and maintain a slim figure. And this prawn and chorizo rice pot is from the dinner party goddess section of the book, so things you might make for guests and so on, and it's really, really delicious. It's using only 70 grams of chorizo for 4 people, so a tiny amount of a very fatty and high flavour ingredient, and it's really maximising the use of that chorizo and using it in a way that you're not eating loads of it, but you're still getting all the taste, and it's combined with prawns and smoked paprika and basmati rice, all really high flavour ingredients, most of which are actually store-cupboard staples. And it's really, really simple and easy. It takes between about 15 to 20 minutes to make, some of which is hands-off time, and that makes it ideal for a weeknight supper when you're cooking at home, maybe in a bit of a rush. And it's really delicious, flavourful. I've made it quite a few times this month, so fantastic recipe. The whole book is pretty good, but this has definitely been my standout recipe. I love it. That brings me on quite nicely to my second favourite of the month, which is Waitrose prawns. These are the jumbo peeled king prawns. I usually buy the essential king prawns, which are also peeled, but I got the just the normal jumbo prawns this month because, this week rather, because they were on offer, so they were a slightly better deal than the essential prawns this month. I have just found that the Waitrose prawns, including the essential ones, are much more delicious than prawns from other supermarkets. They seem sweeter in flavour, the texture seems firmer, especially for some reason the prawns which are farmed in Honduras rather than those from Indonesia. And they are just really, really tasty, and I cook quite a bit of prawns because they're light and quick and delicious, and I like seafood, so these are really ideal. But the other fantastic thing about the Waitrose prawns is that Waitrose is really, really committed to ethical and environmental sustainability for all of its seafood, and this is so important because prawn farming especially has huge environmental implications. I read in an article recently that it's responsible for something like the loss of 25% of the world's mangrove forests, which is really, really alarming. The mangrove forests are as important as the Brazilian rainforest to regulating oxygen on the planet and so on. And Waitrose's policy is to only stock responsibly caught or farmed fish, and fish are reared to high animal welfare standards and using responsible feed and feeding methods. So wild caught larvae is not used to feed the farmed prawns on Waitrose farms, and Waitrose farms are closely monitored for their environmental and social standards. And this is not just something that Waitrose are saying. Greenpeace has also recognised Waitrose as a supermarket which is industry leading in terms of its high welfare standards for its seafood. So that gives me, in addition to the delicious taste, that gives me a lot of confidence in the product in terms of its environmental credentials. So delicious Waitrose prawns, ideally those from Honduras. And I'm going to put these in the fridge now. My next favourite is a tea, and it's the Twinings popcorn tea, which is a mixture of green tea and roasted and puffed rice. So it's similar to a traditional Japanese gen matcha. It is one of the loose leaf pyramids. Just open up to show you. So it is a little silk bag containing the loose leaf tea. And I find the taste is much stronger than typical green tea. It has a deeply savoury edge, and somehow that savouriness makes it much more satisfying and really helps curb my appetite if I'm a bit hungry, say around 11:30, when I want to wait because I prefer to eat lunch rather than have a snack, so I want to wait until lunch. I just have a cup of tea of this, and somehow, because it's got that strong savoury taste, which also makes it ideal to eat alongside savoury food, it somehow seems to make me feel as satisfied as having a light snack would do. Obviously, I would still feel hungry by lunch, but it really helps me carry on throughout the day, and it feels quite energising. I think this is really delicious, and it is $4.49 for 12 bags, so it's a bit more expensive than the average tea bag, but it is very tasty, and of course it is much cheaper than buying your tea from a coffee shop or a tea shop. My next favourite is a chocolate, and it's the Cadbury's Marvellous Smashables, which I think used to be called the Marvellous Creations, and it's not something I would have probably tried on my own steam, but I was given a bar of this for free when I was at Westfield with a friend, and I tried it and I really liked it. It wasn't something I thought would work, but it was very delicious. It combines Cadbury's Dairy Milk Chocolate, which is a classic that a lot of us will know, with popping candy and fruity jelly sweets. So really something that I was quite convinced would not work well together at all, but something about it really does. The acidity of the fruit, and then you've got the popping candy, which adds a bit of interest, and the chocolate breaks up into curved pieces on the inside, so not into chunks or squares. And interestingly, some market research has shown that women actually prefer curved shapes, so that's quite interesting. But this is really fun. It's something a bit different, and you can get this in smaller bars as well if you just want to try it out. Now, I don't eat a huge amount of chocolate actually, so it amuses me somewhat that one of my favourites again is another chocolate, and it's the Sainsbury's Milk Micro Eggs, and these are I hesitate to call them seasonal, but they are brought out around Easter, so I suppose they are seasonal in that respect. And they are like mini eggs, like the standard mini eggs that you get, which I think are Cadbury's as well, but even smaller. You can see how tiny they are, and something about the size of these makes them even more fun and tasty to eat. I really love mini eggs anyway. I love the crunchy shells and the smooth chocolate inside, but I love the micro eggs from Sainsbury's even more, and I look out for them every single year, so I hope they keep making them. They're really cute as well, lots of different pastel colours, and I often use them to decorate cakes and so on as well. So really fantastic. Keep an eye out. You might be able to still find them in shops, some of the Easter remains and so on. And definitely look out for them next year. I think they're well worth the wait. Right, so my next two favourites are going to be restaurant favourites, and the first mention goes to Oaxaca. Just going to hold this up. And Oaxaca isn't really a huge discovery. It's a chain of Mexican restaurants which are mostly based within London. I think there are about 19 branches across the UK, and it's co-founded by Thomasina Myers, who's a former MasterChef winner, and it makes freshly cooked Mexican food and was really part of this wave of bringing Mexican food to the UK. And I went quite recently with a friend actually to Westfield, where I got the chocolate I mentioned previously, and I ate most recently there, but I've also eaten at Wimbledon and at Covent Garden and Canary Wharf, and a couple of times at these different places. And I even went to one of the branches for my birthday a couple of years ago. So you can tell I really, really like Oaxaca. There are a couple of different ways you can eat at Oaxaca. You can just order a standard large size main, or you can have small plates, which is a market style eating, and share across your table, which is really fun and which is always what me and my friends do. And my favourites are really the pork pibil tacos, which are delicious. They're this slow roast pork with red onion and in a small soft taco, and it's absolutely delicious. But actually at Westfield, I was most impressed by the sweet potato and feta taquito, which is like a cigarette containing, a cigarette rolled up shape containing sweet potato and feta, and the shell is crispy and it has a bit of salad on top, and it's absolutely delicious, sort of sweet, salty, crispy, soft. It has everything. And I really like the drinks, the alcoholic drinks and cocktails at Oaxaca as well. The margaritas there are very authentic and they do pack quite a big punch. I really enjoyed the hibiscus margarita there. And my friend actually drank a twisted pear drink there last time, and that's a new drink, and it has vodka, pear, lime and freshly juiced ginger, and that was delicious. I had a sip of hers. It was really refreshing and tasted really bright and zesty, so well worth checking out. So I'll hold this up again. This is a little pack of chilies that they give you when you pay your bill. For my second restaurant favourite, I don't have a prop to hold up, unfortunately, but it is a restaurant that I went to in Dublin. I visited Dublin over the Easter weekend, and it is called The Larder, and it's on Parliament Street. And the food there was just fantastic. My boyfriend and I went there for dinner, and he had the ribeye steak, which came with Café de Paris butter and hand-cut chips, and I had one of their specials, which was slow roast lamb with colcanon mash and carrot puree, and it was just delicious. The lamb was just meltingly soft and beautifully cooked, and all the elements on the plate were, they all added something. So there was the sweetness of the carrot puree and the comforting colcanon mash, which is cabbage and potato mash. And it was so delicious and so well cooked and really refined, but the portions were still quite generous, so it was beautiful to look at, but you left feeling full. And it was a bit higher end, so it was a bit more on the expensive side compared to the prices I usually pay for eating out, but it was well worth it. And they also have an early bird dinner menu, which you can get for 19.95 euros or 23.95 euros, depending on whether you get 2 or 3 courses. And we didn't do that, but I think it's well worth it. And actually, when I went, there were so many dishes on the menu that I would have wanted to try, and I really agonized over it. They had this slow roast pork belly that I thought just sounded amazing. Everything was lovely, and if I lived in Dublin, I would definitely be going back, but I don't. So if you're ever in Dublin, I would highly recommend going to the Larder. It was delicious and the service was also really friendly, so I highly recommend it there. My final favourite is a book, and it's First Bite by B. Wilson. B. Wilson is a food writer and food historian, and in First Bite she writes about how human beings are taught to eat. By that I mean she writes about how for human beings, eating is not instinctive. Because we're omnivorous, we can eat anything. So instead of eating by instinct, we are taught to eat. We learn how to eat, and this is very dependent on our social and cultural environment. And she's based this on a lot of research, anthropological, sociological, psychological, and scientific, and so on. And it's incredibly engaging and fascinating because everyone has learned how to eat. And she really writes about how the forces that shape our tastes and our appetite are both cultural, in the sense of a wider culture, and also within the culture of the family. So your entire eating pattern and your tastes are both based on the country you live in, the background you're from, but are also unique to you, unique to your position in your individual family. And she writes about how our tastes and our appetites are being changed and affected by modern Western style food production. But it's also a very hopeful book because she writes a lot about how tastes can change, and that's a big thesis behind this, that you do have control over what you like and dislike. You can teach yourself to enjoy food if you don't enjoy it, or to enjoy particular kinds of food. There are some fascinating chapters about eating disorders and extremely picky eaters who maybe only eat one or two kinds of food, and the novel ways in which they're being taught to appreciate food and to learn new tastes, and how we can apply that to ourselves, even if we don't have these disorders or these extreme anxieties about food, how we can learn to eat more vegetables and so on, and actually enjoy them. And the whole point is that taste and our taste buds are extremely flexible, and we can change, and they're not fixed in stone, so we're not completely victims of our biology. And I think this is almost a must read for any parent because of the incredible power we have to shape children's appetites and their tastes for different food. But even though I'm not a parent, I thought it was utterly fascinating. It is so engagingly written as well, which I think is really important for a work which could potentially be quite dense. But she introduces a human side through sort of personal anecdotes and anecdotes from other people, but also her own life, and it's organised thematically by chapter. It's an absolutely fantastic book, and I highly, highly recommend that you read it. I think it has something of relevance for everyone because we have all been taught to eat. And when you read over this, I think you'll be looking back over your own childhood and how you learned what foods were good and what foods were bad and what foods were a treat and so on. It's absolutely fantastic. Highly, highly recommended. So those were my food favourites for the month of March. I hope you enjoyed hearing about what I've been cooking and reading and eating and snacking on, and hopefully I'll make these a regular thing. And I will leave a link to my blog in the down bar, and a link to B. Wilson's book and to the restaurants I've mentioned as well, so you can find out more about them. See you next month.